So what do you think for you personally, because authenticity looks different for everybody. What does authenticity mean for you specifically?
For me, it means really being aware of who you are outside of cultural tendencies or any kind of programming, and really following what is true for you in that moment, knowing that it can change because we're not static beings, you
Yeah,
know?
that will evolve with like I
Exactly.
would hope so. I hope as we learn, we grow and our authenticity, shifts. Oh, that would be so horrible if you just lived your life and be like, I'm just gonna say the same because this is authentic. Whoo, that's like a red flag. That right there, that's a red flag. Um, I like what you said about authenticity is yourself outside of all the contributing factors that add in, because there is, the demographic that you're in, your culture, your ethnicity, your background, your trauma in your life, like all of those things can affect and shape your authenticity, but not any one of those is authenticity. You know what I mean? I feel like authenticity is so three-dimensional, and the demographics and the cultural things that we do are very two-dimensional, that it's like, oh yeah, being authentic, because we all know the stereotypes of like the Jewish mother,
Hmm.
and it's like that's her authenticity. It's like, yep, but that's one area of it. That's not her as like a whole person. um so yeah, I think that that's a really important thing, is that authenticity grows and changes with us, and there's contributing factors, because there are lots of, I don't know if you find this in your culture, in your practice with your clients or anything, but people saying like I'm a bad Christian, or I'm a bad vegan, and because they're being their authentic self, but that makes them, air quotes, a bad Christian or a bad vegan or a bad whatever. And it's like, no, your authenticity is the bar, like, and those other things are just contributing factors. They shouldn't be the thing that shapes, like, cuts away at your authenticity. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always cringe when I hear that. And you bring up an interesting point, and labels are tricky. They have their pros, because it's good to know um, where we can come together on certain things. But then there comes a point where people over identify with labels, and it loses the positive aspect of, or the helpful aspect of the label, because
Yeah.
they're good to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes, especially when people over identify with that. And then that's where I'm a bad vegan, or I'm a bad this or that. No, you just are who you are, and this is how you choose to relate to that thing.
Yeah, and I think that uh, as you're saying that, I'm just thinking of like the queer community. So I am queer, and when you over identify, you lose the luster of, like, when you identify, it's great to find community, it's great to fit in. It also explains things, especially with like medical diagnosis. Yes, as much as people say no labels, it's like it really helps people who are sick or
Mm-hmm.
suffering. But when I was in my mid to late 20s, I had a really hard time with the queer community, because everyone that I met, that's all they were. They were queer and they had a
Mm.
job. And I found it so hard to integrate into that and be my authentic self when um every group I went to, every hangout was very, okay, so if we go out, we have to go to a gay bar. We can't go to any other club except gay clubs. When we travel, because the groups that I was with, everyone traveled together, everyone vacationed together. Okay, it can only be places that has like a huge queer community, and then that's of course the activities that we're going to do. And I'm sitting there like, that's awesome, but it was over identifying, and it's like, this isn't my authentic self. This one, like, I want to go to Boston because I think the architecture is cool. I want to go to New York because I love theater. I don't want it to be like, oh, and now the only, musical that I can see is Rent. Because it's so queer based. So I find that like what you said, like over identifying really is, and for people who do it and they live their life and they love it, whatever, this is not for you. Be
Right,
authentic.
right.
These are people who it's like, it's almost stunting them that they're like, this is
Hmm.
what I'm supposed to be. So now this is what I have to be. And it just isn't, it's not the way to go for authenticity. It's not the best thing to do in my humble correct opinion, that with being authentic, it's not one size fits all, because there are so many things about you and I who are completely different people that are like in the background that don't come to the forefront. Like my sexuality, unless I bring it up, like here, it was an example, it's rarely ever talked about. It's not a large part of my life. Does that
Right.
make sense? Like, and other people,
Absolutely.
it's a huge part of their life. It is, I am a gay chef. And I'm like, that is awesome. I'm a business owner. No, there's no word in front of it. Well, there is successful. That's the word I'll put in front. I'm a successful business owner. I don't
That
want
one
to
I
be a
like.
woman business owner, a queer business. Nope, nope. Successful. That's the only word in front that's going to matter to me. And
Right.
so there are so many things that are authenticity, different potencies, because everyone is different. Like, for me, and I think for you too, like our spirituality, our connection to people, the work that we do, not necessarily our business, but the work we do with people is so much in the forefront. It's like for us that's a lot of our authenticity, where other things go into the background. Like how much I love sugar definitely comes up when I'm eating, but it doesn't come up in normal conversation. The fact that I've looked at someone and gone, if you made me a life-size chocolate car that like you kept in a freezer that I could just like nibble on, I'd love you forever. And that was a very real conversation I had last month, by the way. I was like, that if that's a
Whole
way,
car.
yeah, a life-size car. And I'm like, you put it like in a giant walk-in freezer that I could just go in and like chew on a tire or something. That would make me happy. Like, so authenticity, it's not an all or nothing game. It's potency. It's what's coming to the forefront. Everyone's potency, everyone's intensity is different. So someone else's authenticity, their spirituality may be completely in the background, but their like food may be completely in the foreground. Do you see that like authenticity for everyone, it's not one size fits all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot that came to mind when you brought up spirituality, because what I find, especially when someone is new to spirituality, it becomes all about the crystals and all about the tarot readings and all about that. And listen, my house looks like a crystal shop. So I'm not, but that is not what spirituality is. That is not your connection to source or to your soul, you know? But that is, so there are certain things that I find that people take on when they're new to spirituality. And unfortunately, I have found that some people do get stuck in that even after a few years.
Yeah.
But eventually, I do think that some people move on from that. And then there's also the idea or the reality of, that just because something is true about us, it doesn't mean that we have to be public about it or that we have to divulge that in every conversation or every connection. Because what being authentic to me really, it's more about how being authentic to yourself. If I'm in a conversation, for example, that doesn't necessarily feel safe or appropriate to me to bring up the fact that I'm a psychic and that I can see past life. I know, then it's I'm being authentic to myself by not bringing that up. I find that also there's this idea that we have to be completely vulnerable and expose all of our parts, and that is not always healthy.
Yeah,
there's a discernment that needs to be had about when to say the thing, when to be open about this or that. So it's also listening to your own cues, your own felt senses. In this moment, this is what I'm honoring about myself. That's also being authentic.
definitely. And it's like it's a beautiful cliche. The open vulnerability and it's a beautiful cliche. We've all heard it. Like that's the only way to be authentic is to be completely open and raw. And that's a lovely concept. It is not great in execution because there's too many other logistics, there's too many other moving parts. What about someone else's ego? What about someone else's ulterior motive? And then it's, well, you should feel safe and secure enough in yourself to and I'm like, I feel safe and secure enough, you're right, in myself, not cracked open by somebody else. And it's about sharing. Authenticity is about being empowered to share what you want when you want, and everyone is complicated, everyone's multifaceted. So acting like there's just this one, like you said, static version of yourself, and
Right.
that's authenticity. It's like, no, because guess what, some days I'm incredibly quiet. I know everyone doesn't believe that. Like, not you, but if I'm sick, if I'm, have done a bunch of work the day before, if I'm tired, I'm much more reserved and introverted. And that's just as authentically me as walking up to strangers at a 2,000 person event.
Right.
They're both me. And you bring up a good point that like some things we keep private because they're ours and we should be empowered to share what we want, not when other people want us to or think we should. And you're not hiding. It's not like lies through omission. It's your life. It should be exactly how you want it to look. And the easy one to say here is being queer, being in the closet. It's like, well, your authentic self would be out of the closet, not at Thanksgiving. Not if someone's going to call
No,
you the F slur, not if, and then people are like, well, then you shouldn't be there. It's like, it's so much more complex than that. Like the easy answer would to be, oh, only go where people love you. I'm sorry. No, like there are studies that show half the countries around the world, I can't travel in alone because of my gender. Let's be honest. You are not a slice of Wonder Bread. There are
right.
places that aren't safe for you. If they're
Hmm.
burning a cross in a front yard, you are going to avoid that street. You're not going to walk up and go, I am Latina and proud. You're going to go, I am going home. I don't need to meet them. There's no need to open up and be vulnerable in that
No,
situation. There is a and it is like, it doesn't always have to be a safety thing. It
right.
can be a, what am I comfortable with? What do I want to talk about? Because there are parts of our lives that are incredibly, for some people, incredibly personal. So most of my life is lived in the public eye through TV shows, through podcasts, through my business. A lot of it is public. What people don't understand is that my personal life is completely private. Like, and no one would know that because I'm so open about everything on social media. But then there's this little thing that's just mine that I don't share with anybody. And it's like people will ask, like, oh no. And I'm like, no, anyone who I'm like really close to, my inner circle, I have nothing to do with on social media. I'm not friends with, they do not follow me on social media. There's nothing like that. Like, it's my personal life is completely separate from everything else. And I still see myself as being a champion of authenticity because that was a conscious decision for me to keep, as I grew my business and realized that so much of it would be in the public eye, that I wanted to keep something for myself. And so I set up that boundary. And that to me is authentic. And so it just depends upon who you are, right? I mean, everyone's different.
Absolutely. And for me, it depends a lot on my energy levels. I
Mhm.
have friends that are not into spirituality, that have no desire to hear about the things that I see in the, and so talking to them about some of these processes or some of these um, whenever like a new ability comes online and you're having that expansion, I know you know what I'm talking about, and it creates a whole ripple effect in your life. Those are not the people I'm going to talk about it with,
Mhm.
or I'm going to say it in a very different way than I would, let's say, you or my spiritual mentor or someone or another psychic, So, but it's not that I'm hiding anything from this particular friend. It's knowing that going in detail or speaking about a certain thing with that person is going to require a lot more explanation, a lot more energy, and that's not what I want.
Like, not today, not today, not enough caffeine. But I
No,
think that that's a really important thing to bring up, is that authenticity is rooted in self-awareness. You
right.
can't be your authentic self without knowing who you are. And part of self-awareness is knowing what's around you, like around yourself, and the connections that you have and how you interact with them. Because you're right, there are certain people I talk to very differently. Like some it's all the woo. Like I
Hmm.
had a client call me because of a spell that was done a few weeks ago, and they had said I was in the middle of a meeting with a lawyer, and it, one of those big scary meetings that business owners have to go through, and they got a psychic ping in the middle of it and made a noise in front of the lawyer, just a woo. And then the lawyer was like, what do we need to talk about? And they were like, no, nothing, nothing, nothing. And when they called me, they're like, it was for you. Like the psychic ping was to talk to you about the spell, that da da da, you know. But they were not going to tell the lawyer, like, no, I just got a psychic ping that I need to message my psychic spiritual advisor because a spell worked to help us with the lawyer stuff. No, it was not for you. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
But when they
not
called
necessary.
me, it
Yeah,
was all out. It was like, this is what happened, and this is why this is cool. And I can't believe that this worked, because it was one of those times you've had it happen where it's those new people who aren't used to manifesting the reality that they want, and then they
hmm.
get it for the first time, and you make a noise. We
It's
all
so
make a
fun.
noise.
I get it. Yes.
We all went woo the first time we manifested something into
I
reality.
still do sometimes.
Yes. Oh, that is a good point. Never stop celebrating your
No,
authenticity. Never. I truly believe that you should be your biggest hype man. And
absolutely.
I mean that. So when I say that, everyone always has some preconceived notions because I'm so loud and I'm so flamboyant in public that they're like, oh, I should be walking around with a megaphone and sparklers like you. No, some of the most authentic people I know are introverts or shy or quiet. It really is. Being your biggest hype man isn't necessarily about being loud. It's about speaking volumes through your energy that emits your authenticity without a shadow of a doubt. No
Right,
matter who you are, it's like, that's who you are. And that's fabulous to me. That's what's loud. Your
right.
energy, your authenticity, not your voice, not your hand motions, nothing like that. It's I think that's a big difference, with people who think that authenticity has to be loud and flashy.
Yeah, that's a strange one for me because not everyone is loud and
Mhm.
flashy by nature. I'm not.
Mhm.
I can be. I have my, but it takes a lot.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm one of the most authentic people I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Authenticity looks different for everybody, and that when people have that first example, they try to emulate, like we were talking about. When people start spirituality, they're trying on a bunch of new things. And I always look at it like they're trying on shoes. And like they
Hmm.
just keep trying, they're trying on the crystals, they're trying on the tarot, they're trying on psychic mediumship. They just keep trying on shoes. And it's like some of them will work, some of them won't, but you have to try them on.
Right.
Explore, change, whether you're quiet, whether you're loud, whether you're flashy, whether you talk about things really openly or cuss in public. Because I know plenty of people who cuss like a motherfucker in private, but would never cuss in public or on camera or anything like that. I know many business people who in private mouths like sailors, but never ever in public. And it's like they're still being authentic. They're just choosing where their energy goes at any given time. and they
Right.
tried on those shoes and liked those shoes.
Yep. It's making those choices consciously.
Hmm.
I
Yes.
do think though, the one caveat is sometimes we make those choices consciously, but with the idea or the background of I want to get a specific outcome out of this, so I'm going to show up like this. I don't necessarily think that that's being authentic.
Yeah, I think that if you are being authentic because you want to not manifest, manipulate an outcome,
Right.
then that's not actual authenticity. Even if you're being authentic, air quotes, it's I'm saying that in case someone's only listening to audio. It's like, I swear to God, I'm doing air quotes. That it's not actually authentic. And again, that's just a misconception. They're like, I also have a very hard time with the love me or hate me, I'm not going to change. And what
Right.
they're saying is, I know that I'm being toxic. I am self-aware enough to know that I am an asshole and I'm not going to change. It's like, that's an excuse. So I don't like that part of the mainstream authenticity, that it's like you get to do whatever you want whenever you want without consequence because it's your authentic self. You are not absolved from consequence because you're being your authentic self. You may still rub someone the wrong way. You may still be toxic. You may still even just make mistakes that you have to apologize for. Like, being your authentic self doesn't magically make everyone love you. As a matter of
Exactly.
fact, I think it makes way more people dislike you because so many
Yeah.
people aren't living their authentic selves that it's just they're like, ooh, I don't like that. And it's like, yep, well, that's okay. Um, so that your authentic self will piss more people off than,
It could potentially, absolutely.
and I think that is a very good measuring stick. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen my social media posts where I go, one of my life goals is to every single day offend at least one person. I want to hurt people with my authenticity. I want to make people uncomfortable to be fake around me
That's cute.
because I am so loudly authentic that they're like, "Oh, okay, that's a thing." And me to go, "Yes, yes, choke on the sparkle, baby. Choke on it." That is a life goal. At least once a day, I want someone through social media, my personal life, my professional life to go, "Ah, ah," and it's like, "Yep, I feel like I've done my job as an
That's a
authentic."
new one for me. I've never heard that one before. That's great.
Yes, a life goal, make people uncomfortable. Yeah.
How are you doing today on that?
Today I feel like I will with my social media posts later today,
Okay.
because not all of them are nice today. They are a lot of, "Oh, you're toxic. Maybe you should look at that." That's not cute. You think it's cute because TikTok told you it was cute. That don't make it cute.
Right.
Type
Yeah.
thing. So I'm sure I will offend some people with those comments. So anyone who is attempting to be their authentic self, anyone who's watching and listening, it's not easy. It's a learned skill. Like, because we're told our entire lives how to be and how to act and who to be, not just through our parents, but through our culture, through school, through work. And so what are the hardest situations for you to be your authentic self with?
Right now, not so much, but growing up, it was really hard to move through all the different spaces as an immigrant, as a Latina, that living in Miami, and I had to when I was with strictly Latin groups, I had to, it was really hard to bring in all these other parts of myself because I was in touch with my spirituality from a very young age. And back then, in very Latin groups and familial groups, if it didn't have to do with Jesus and church, it was just wrong. So it was. So I grew up really um, learning how to fit in a safe way into all these different groups. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, fuck that. That is not leading me anywhere good. And I just don't play those games anymore. I just really don't.
Yeah, the more authentic you are, the easier it is. And when you first start down the path of being authentic, it can be really hard, I think, in the structured spaces. So within the family unit, because no matter what family you have, there is a structure with it. And if you step outside of that structure, out of that preconceived picture that family has of you, it can cause a lot of problems. Like me stepping out, because believe it or not, I was a little rebellious. I was a little bit of a hot mess as a teenager. Puberty was not nice to me. And so that was the image that my family had of me, was this really aggressive, rebellious human. And so when I grew up to be responsible and intelligent and hardworking and successful, they actually had more of a problem with that than they did with the kid who would cuss out a principal. In my defense, the principal was wrong. He
I'm
tried
sure
to
he
tell
was.
me what I could wear and what I couldn't wear. I was not wearing anything inappropriate. They were Curious George pajama pants. They were adorable. Okay. I don't
I'm
care.
with you. I'm with you 100%.
So they were more okay with me being the kid who might be suspended from school versus a successful business person, because they had that picture. So being your authentic self as you're growing and changing is really hard when you're with the people who have a picture of you, and that's family. A lot of times that's also culture. Like we brought up, yet there are stigmas that you have to live up to as an Irish person, as a Latina. Like there are some very real expectations that
Hmm.
are shoved up your bum since you were born. So I think those are the most difficult places to grow your authenticity when you're starting, because they are so structured and they are so sometimes oppressive, even like the Catholic Church.
Right.
Not the best place for authenticity. That is straight up be a sheep, blend in with the sheep and stuff. So my final question for you is, someone who's just starting their authentic journey, which is mind blowing for both of us because we're so deep into it by now.
Right.
Where does someone start where did you start? Where would you suggest someone start with their authentic journey?
Definitely with self-awareness. But I would say that just because your self-awareness is growing and increasing does not necessarily mean that you are authentic or that your authenticity is increasing. Because after that, it's the choices that you're making. Because one could be very self-aware of what's happening and make choices that go against that awareness. So it comes, there's, you can call it steps, but it's not linear steps, as I'm sure you know. But it's really about aligning your self-awareness, like who you really are, to your desires, to where you actually are in that moment. And at the same time, being aware or having an idea of where you want to go so that you can align to that. So there's a lot of different pieces, but it really does start with what we were saying earlier, self-awareness, because you can't be authentic if you don't know who you are. You know
Yeah.
what? Yeah, and it sounds obvious when we're talking about it, but really, I find that so many people out there really do not know themselves, really do not have healthy relationships with themselves, and have very little intention in their life. And when I say intention, I don't mean like, oh, I intend to do that. I mean daily intentional practices with themselves. And that just leads to a whole slew of world problems, but we won't go there.
Yeah. I think you're right. It starts with self-awareness. The advice that I would give is that, like you said, it starts with self. Excuse me. Um, it starts with self, period. Like, I think authenticity, when you first start, should involve nobody else. No one should be aware, because in the age of Instagrammable life, you want to post it. Like, I am starting my authentic journey, but then all these different people and opinions are impeding on what you think authenticity will look like. And whether you like it or not, that will affect your authenticity. That will affect your journey. That will make it slower as people are like, do this, do this, do this. And you're just kind of being ping ponged around. When you first start, do it just within yourself. Do it in a controlled space. Do not pick the structured spaces to start. Do not pick church. Do not pick family. Do not pick culture to start being authentic, unless those are very loosey-goosey in your life, because those will just make it harder. What you want to do is start simple, even stupid simple, so that you can just keep growing and getting more comfortable, because the more comfortable you get with those little things, then it'll grow to medium, and then it'll grow to big, and then all of a sudden authenticity will just be your default. But the big mistake people make is starting at the top, starting with the biggest thing. It's like, this is the thing that affects my life the most is family and how they see me. So that's where I need to be authentic first. They will chew you up and spit you out and then ask to pass the peas. It's just not the best way to do it. Start small, grow, and make it a completely singular process to have authenticity. And then other people can get involved and scream at you. And eventually you'll get to the point where if you're being your authentic self, you just don't care. Like, me and Gabby have gotten to this point. We're both sitting here, like, when we get a hate comment on something that we're purely authentic with, we're like, oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Like, it
In
doesn't.
Spanish, we say, vaya con Dios.
Yes.
Go with God.
I love it. See, it's just these little things. It's like, yep. And it's not to say people attacking your authenticity won't hurt. It will sometimes. It absolutely, it will. Cause let me tell you what, when I get like really big hate comments, like I've had a few posts where all of them are hate comments. Like, you need to die. May you burn in hell. When you get those, like, you take a step, you don't take a step backwards, but you like stop and go, okay, that's a lot of hate. All right. I'm gonna have some feels and then I'm gonna keep going. You don't take the post down. You don't do anything like that. Occasionally you say thank you to the haters because they boosted you in the algorithm, and then the post does better and you get 5 new clients. That's fine too. But it really is a singular experience to start, and not losing focus on that. Because the second you start putting other people in, thinking, but my partner, but my husband, but my wife knows me so well, they should be in it from the beginning. No, they shouldn't.
And many times what they know so well is what you have started or you had identified with, and what's really not underneath all of it. Because what's also true for a lot of people is once they really embark on this, the people that are closest to them start to have their own reactions to it. It's like, well, you've been this way for 20 years. And they have such a hard time explaining that it's not that they were lying to you, but they were lying to themselves.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And
I
so
love that.
I love what you were saying, because another thing that I find is that because of all the things that we talked about, people ignore their own bodies. And it's really hard to be authentic when you're ignoring what you're feeling emotionally, what's going on in your nervous system, what your body is trying to tell you. And a lot of times people, especially women, override all of that. And that's not being authentic to their own needs. So I love that we're advising people to start small, because I agree. If you can start by saying no and not needing to give an explanation, but no, I can't do that, because you know that you are overspent, that you are hungry, that you need to, whatever it is that's going on inside of you, and you start honoring those little things, it just keeps growing and your momentum keeps, going and going. So yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
I love that. Boundaries are a big part of authenticity. And thing that the misconception about boundaries is that it's about other people. So a boundary is saying, I will do this, or I will set this, or I will shift here. It's not saying, Gabby, you can't do this around me. That's not
Right.
a boundary. Everyone thinks that's a boundary. No, that's
No.
a request. That's being bossy. It's a boundary is knowing that if you were to call me fat, I would feel personally attacked. And
Hmm.
I would set a boundary by leaving the room.
Exactly.
It's a me thing. Authenticity is a me thing. It is not
Hmm.
a y'all thing. It's not
Right.
meant to be a group sport. It's meant to be completely singular. And so you're right, boundaries play a huge role in authenticity, and then how you use them and utilize them so that it's actually all you. Because how many times do people give away their authenticity and their power to other people by being like, well, you did this and that's why blank. It's like,
Oh,
oh, honey, like, yes, they did that and that sucked. I am absolutely validating that. And you can leave the room, and you can call them a twat, and you can never see them again if you don't want to. Like, there are empowering options that people just don't want to look at because they're not looking at that self-awareness of authenticity. Like,
right.
what do you actually need to be authentic? What do you need around you to be authentic? And then make that happen, as
Exactly.
opposed to being like, well, I'm a victim of circumstance. If you can't be authentic around your family, you need to be aware of that. And then either not
Hmm.
be around your family or you change, because expecting them to change all of their generational paradigms seems a little unrealistic once you say it out loud now, doesn't it?
It's just not going to happen. And it's not, and we shouldn't expect it to happen because that is their journey. Those are their choices. And like you said, it's about authenticity, is about us,
Yes.
regardless of how others react.
I love that. And this was fabulous. Do you have any final closing comments about authenticity before we sign off?
I think we could keep going and going. So, no.
We could. We are fabulous people who could just talk about spirituality stuff for hours. Um, but this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this and sharing your authentic self and your
Thank you.
expertise through your authentic self. Is there a website or social media that people could reach out if they wanted to schedule with you or anything?
Absolutely. The best place is Instagram at Soul Alchemy. Alchemy, IE, MIE, not with a Y.
Perfect. I love it. That is awesome. So Soul Alchemy on Instagram is fabulous. We, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
and doing this
you.
and being available for this topic, because this is one that everyone thinks is so simple, and it's not. Like, there's so many roadblocks that go through authenticity and tackling this. I honestly don't know many professionals who are willing to tackle this conversation. So the fact that you're like, yeah, let's have a real conversation about it is
Yeah,
awesome. So thank you for joining us. For all of the listeners, thank you for tuning in, and people who are watching, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more. We will obviously be talking about this kind of stuff always, because we will never
always.
stop. We will never stop talking about it. We could talk for
No,
hours. So, and if you have any questions or comments, please reach out. The link is in the bio, and you can also comment and we will respond. Go forth, be the hero of your own story. And if you feel like sharing your authentic story, please tell us. We want to know.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Lily.
Absolutely.